Bing bong. All right.
Bing bong, bong, bing.
Bing bong. After you, Chris.
Okay, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Old School, New School podcast. I am Will Charles Egan, and as always, Chris Meekins. How's everybody doing? If you like the content that we are producing here, be sure to scroll down, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and be sure to hit the little bell next to the subscribe button so that you can be notified whenever there's a new episode. So, Chris, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. You learn. I don't think there's ever a time in your life where you're not open to learning about
Absolutely
things. It's you think, oh, I'm going to get older. Well,
right.
It's like, oh, wait a minute, this is new. Oh,
right.
Never been in this situation before.
You figured.
So things are good. Things are good at the car wash. I'm
nice.
A lot more calmed down.
Good. That's
it's
good.
like crazy. We're thinking about doing another a men's night out on Monday. My wife's going to start doing a women's ministry on Monday night. And so I thought, well, why don't I'm going to be there. Why don't I just have something for men in the other room, and we'll maybe have wings.
Oh, heck yeah. That sounds amazing. Even that's the great way to get people in the door is be like, hey,
wings.
Free food. Wings especially. Wings are one of my weaknesses. I love wings.
They're not cheap, though.
Really?
Oh. Well, okay. Probably from your perspective, they're a good price.
That's true. Because wings are the cheaper cut of the meat.
Yeah, but it used to be like 10 cents a wing night.
Oh, boy, I wish.
Could you imagine that for $1.20 you get a dozen wings?
What?
Yeah.
When?
A long time ago.
Long time ago. Back in the day.
But now they've become so popular that I paid $18 the other day at a restaurant for 10.
Yeah. Yeah, where I work,
they were good.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Where I work, we have wings, and they're about 14. And so on Sunday, NFL Day, they have a special where wings are half off. It's only $7 for 10 wings.
I think Oak and Stone, that's where we were the other day with my kids.
Yep.
And they have Wednesday. I think Wednesday, $8 for wings.
Ooh. I might have to go to Oak and Stone on a Wednesday.
Wait, today's Wednesday.
Oh, well.
I wonder how many points it is on Weight Watchers. Yeah, that's my other new thing. My wife's got me on Weight Watchers.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Got you doing Weight Watchers.
It's horrible.
It's
man.
boot camp. Yeah, it's supposed to be hard.
So then we'll get started. So I was at the car wash the other day, and I was starving because I was working. I haven't worked in so many years, and I'm like, I got to go get something to eat. There's a Jimmy John's right down. So I thought, well, I'll just go get a Jimmy John's with an unwich. You know what an unwich? Oh. Well, they don't put it in bread. They wrap it in lettuce.
Oh, okay.
So there's no bread.
Yeah, that's really
good. So I
sit
down. I got this. I got the number 7, which is double meat.
Yes.
And I sit down, and I'm opening it up, and I'm got my Weight Watchers app out.
Yep.
And I'm trying to, how many points? It was like 25 points.
That's high?
I get 30 for the day.
What? Oh, no. Oh, my gosh.
So anyway, Jimmy John's is not the answer for Weight Watchers. And so I'm like, what am I going to do for the rest of the day?
Well, cry about it.
Oh, let's just put that app away for the rest of the day. We'll start again tomorrow.
I just like Jersey Mike's too much. I would never do that.
Yeah.
But speaking of being perfect and living life.
Which I am,
Right. Being above reproach. Today on Baller for Jesus Week. What is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's already week 6.
It's crazy.
We are talking about being above reproach. And the whole time before this, I kept saying it is ironic that the two of us are talking about being above reproach. Because Lord knows we're not always above reproach.
Is anybody?
Well, I guess nobody is. I mean, this really is the whole crux of this is nobody is perfectly above reproach, but somebody's got to talk about it.
So let's talk about what's approach.
Mm-hmm. What is approach? Yeah. Reproach. Not approach. Not roach. Reproach. And if you're wondering what on earth does that mean, well, it's defined here in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. And it says, here is a trustworthy saying, whoever aspires to be an overseer desires a noble task. Now, the overseer is to be above reproach, which is faithful to his wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not given to drunkenness, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. So there you got 10 rules, 10 life lessons, guidelines.
No, how about 10 traps?
10 traps. Oh, okay.
Because these are all things that people get trapped in that they are mistakes. I don't know. I don't know. We should have went to seminary and we would.
Right. Maybe we'd know what the heck we're talking about. But I look at this list here, and I see all natural human tendencies. When I read this list, I see, these are the natural inclinations for a person. People tend to naturally get upset with things. People tend to be, pretty temperate. Some people are not temperate. Some people don't have self-control. If you were to just say, I'm going to give in to all my vices, I'm going to say, I don't care about morality anymore, you would just do whatever you want. All of these things would be near impossible to do on your own. You can, to a certain degree, live up to the world's standard of what perfection is on your own. But I really believe that there is no true being above reproach without having God in your life.
Oh, you can't do it.
It's not possible.
So right before we started this, we were being not above reproach.
Correct. We were being not above reproach.
We were talking about ministry. And we were talking about the difficulty of ministry and how people can be critical to those people.
Right.
Which we were being a little critical. We were just analyzing some of the traps that I don't think we were being facetious. I think we were just talking about how difficult it is to be on a church staff.
Right, yeah.
And being on a church staff means that you have some rules that nobody knows about.
Right. Yes.
And so if I was walking down the street and I saw Pastor Jonathan or Pastor Randy walking down the street smoking a cigarette with a can in a brown paper bag.
Yeah.
I might judge them.
Yes.
I would
what is this?
He's my pastor?
Right.
Meantime, I'm sitting out on my lanai with a cigar. And fortunately, I don't drink. I got that one taken care of.
That's good. You got one.
I got one. Check.
Took how many years to do?
It took me only because, wait a minute, but I'll have a bowl of ice cream, a half a gallon at a time.
Yep.
So being above reproach it's more about how do I help people listen to what I'm trying to teach them. So if I'm teaching people that you shouldn't be addicted to drugs and alcohol,
right?
For me to go and do that, is not. And they're like, well, there's nothing illegal about alcohol.
Right.
Absolutely,
yeah.
But there is something about being drunk all the time, and we know what happens when people are drunk. They tend to do things
not in their best judgment.
Right, they're not thinking. And so I'm not saying there's anything wrong with drinking.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is drunkenness is basically a sin because that's what it talks about.
Right. I think that the whole point of this verse is like what you said. It is to give guidelines to somebody who wants to teach. The beginning of the verse says, whoever aspires to be an overseer desires a noble task. So it's a good thing to be an overseer,
Some people call him an elder, some people call him a pastor, whatever.
It is a noble task. Now the overseer is to be above reproach. And then it gives you the list of all the things. But why? Why is it that they have to be this perfect above reproach person? And it's like, well, if you, like you said, if you were to walk into an AA meeting and the person who is chairing the meeting is sitting there and he's going, okay, now everybody open the big book and you were going to go to this chapter and we're going to read it. And then as everybody opens their books, he turns around, grabs a Bud Light, takes a sip. All right, so, and everybody would be like, hey, well, excuse me, what? Because
nobody's listening to him.
Right. Nobody can teach out of a position of
I wasn't drunk.
Yes, exactly. Slippery slope. Yeah. Nobody can teach out of a position of not practicing themselves.
I I'm not sure if our church that they sign a covenant for drugs and alcohol.
I think it's no appearing in public while drinking. I don't think it's a strict like you cannot, but it is setting the image
Example.
setting the example, right?
Being above reproach.
Being above reproach. Kind of what we're talking about here.
Well, again, if you're sitting like, okay, I'm sitting at, the ship's keg. I'm sitting at the ship's keg, and I'm like watching the game, and I can barely sit down.
Yeah.
And then I get up there. So my pastor in Ohio, Pastor Jonathan, love him. He wouldn't drink, and people would say, well, why don't you drink? Does God say you can't drink? He says, no, but I don't drink, and I don't talk about drinking because I'm up here in the pulpit, and if I say, well, I had a drink with my friends, there's going to be a guy out in the crowd that says, see, Pastor Jonathan drinks.
Yes.
Why can't I drink?
Yes.
Well, because you don't know how to stop.
Right.
See, I don't drink not because it's a sin. I don't drink because I don't know how to stop.
Yes.
At least that's how it was until I did stop.
Right.
There is no limit. There's never enough. And so he would just do it to be above reproach, so that someone couldn't say, well, if Jonathan drinks, I'm pretty sure that I could drink.
If I may, one of my favorite verses is Paul's letter to the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians, where he talks about, I don't know if you know the passage, eating sacrificial meat from the temple. That is,
there you go.
That is one of my
brilliant.
Yes, that is one of my favorite verses that I was ever taught on, that I like to teach on. Is what Paul is essentially saying is, we are new spiritual heavenly bodies. We're overcomers. We have conquered death.
Right.
Now, when it comes to the pagan rituals and pagan traditions, if you want to get literal, if you want to get down to the nitty gritty, those things don't matter anymore. We have power over those things. If you want to eat meat that's been sacrificed to a pagan god, it's neither here nor there. However, for some people, kind of like how alcohol for some people is a vice, eating the sacrificial meat, if it causes a brother or sister to stumble, then it is sin and you shouldn't do it. Why? Because you're helping your brother up. You're not trying to do something that could let him go, hey, John over here is eating the sacrificial meat from the temple, which would then cause him to go back into his old religious practices. So he's saying it's neither here nor there. However, if there is somebody that it is an issue for them, don't do it around them, because if you want to be above reproach and if you want to help your brother or sister be above reproach, don't do that thing that will cause them to stumble around them.
That's why I don't get invited to a lot of parties nowadays.
Yeah. There you go.
The high school where drinking, so excuse me, I'm hiccup. So let's go through these.
Yeah.
Faithful to his, so be above reproach, faithful to his wife. What do you think that means?
It means to be faithful to your wife. It's pretty straightforward.
And again, why? Well, because that's what you committed to. If I'm out whoring around, people are like, okay, well, he's whoring around.
Yeah.
Why would I listen to him? I want to be a leader. I want to be an overseer. I want to set an example.
Yeah.
Faithful to your wife. And so I think for me, it would be like I'm always busting everybody's chops.
Sure.
That's what I do.
That's me too.
And I have to learn not to do that to my wife at home.
Right.
And in private.
Sure.
Same thing with like porn. I don't do porn because I'm basically lusting after someone else instead of my wife.
Yeah, that's faithfulness to your wife.
Right. And so those are the things. And again, you ask God, okay, what is being faithful? There's some women or men that this is important to them. In my case, that's not important to me. This is important to me. And they're like, well, that's the stupidest thing in the whole world. Yeah. You know, I just, I'm a loyalist. And
yes.
So my number one priority is loyalty.
Right.
As long as you're loyal, I don't care.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, we can live in squalor, which we don't, because
thank God.
She loves cleaning. Right. And I love it. But it's like, as long as you're faithful.
Yeah.
And so we've been that. Okay, why don't you do the second one? Temperate. What does that mean?
Temperate. So, you think temperate, you think temperature, not having a hot temperature, not being angry all the time.
Okay.
That is, I think, easier said than done. There are a number of different places. How do I word this carefully? There are a number of different places from whereout my childhood I put a hole in the door or the wall because I was, multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
Not just at home. Like, I used to punch things a lot. Yeah. So that, I know when
I don't see that. You said that last week about me. You're like, I don't see you as being an angry person.
I know I'm happy and bubbly when I'm doing stuff like this, but when I'm
in public,
yes, because I'm above reproach in public. But when I'm alone usually, and when I'm just upset about something, I can get angry, and I don't tend to get angry at people very often. I'm not the guy that gets into yelling matches ever or fights, but when I'm alone and I'm angry, I can get really pissed off sometimes. And I have lost my cool a couple of times and put a hole in the wall at certain locations. But the desire to overcome that is something that is stronger than to just...
I'm in shock. I'm
really
utterly in shock right now.
I know. I don't seem like I'm a very angry guy. I can get angry, but it's a very private thing.
And it's more at yourself.
Yes.
It's a personal thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's more at myself, but it is something that...
Probably people don't understand that. They get that.
Absolutely. It's something that I have a desire to overcome more than it is I have a desire to feed into it, because I know it is not something that is a godly trait to, put a hole in the dining room table.
Come on into my house. Why do you have this picture?
Why is there a poster down there?
Why is this picture down there?
Yeah.
Oh, I just thought it would be nice of my mother.
Yeah. It's kind of at knee level. Why is it down there? I put my knee in the wall. But the temperature thing is something that a lot of people struggle with. It's something that some people don't really struggle with, and that's great. But if you are hot-headed, it isn't like, all right, just stop, just breathe, take a deep breath. Because when you want to hit something or when you want to yell at somebody, it's not just like I'm going to take a deep breath and remove myself. Yeah. But sometimes the best option when you are angry is to just be like, I got to go. I'm going to just remove myself from the situation. Right. And it is a little awkward at first when you do it, but you will definitely not regret it, because you're like, if I were to remain in that situation, I would definitely not enjoy what would happen.
Which brings us right to the next one, self-control. And so self-control is, I've always felt like someone needs to talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And I would just do it. And I've caused a lot of pain and a lot of suffering to myself and to people in the room by saying that. And so self-controlled for me is that sometimes you just don't have to say what's on your mind.
Right. Yes.
Sometimes you don't have to participate in, okay, let's see what happens here. Let's all jump off this cliff.
Yes.
Sometimes self-control is saying, yes, I have every right and ability to do this, but I'm not going to do it right now because I'm pretty sure that that's not what I want to become.
Right. It's going to lead to disaster. And you get to a point in walking with your faith where you can start to recognize, stage 1 and stage 2 of leading to the slippery slope that is having, an angry fit or something like that. When you start to recognize those signs of, oh boy, I know this is going to be bad, that's when you start to, there's different self-control methods. There's remove yourself from the situation. There's, think about something else. But I think what really matters is with self-control, especially when you're trying to be an example and be a leader, it is to remove yourself from that situation, because you already know if you're there for too long and if you keep talking, something bad's going to happen.
Right.
So I would say, obviously if you have some sort of anger issues, like we're finding out we both have to some degree, the way of doing that is, there's healthy outlets. For me, it's I lift in the gym, and you have physical outlets and things like that. So something as simple like that is a really good way to control those things.
I think I'm having a self-control moment in my mind right now. what ends up happening if you're in a relationship and you feel like something has to be said and you have this discussion, it's at some point saying, I'm not going to escalate this.
Right.
I'm going to, okay, I said my point, stop. It goes to people that rage. It goes to people that ragers. And I, historically, when years ago, I was a rager. I would get on a point, and then until someone needed to cry.
Yes.
And it's like, you don't need to do that. You can say what you have to say and move on. Okay, with that.
With that, respectable.
How about respectable?
Oh, what's that?
What's that?
Being respectable is somebody that you respect.
What does that have to do with God's plan?
Well, think of somebody that you respect. So who's the first person that comes to mind when you say that's somebody I respect?
Pastor Jonathan.
Okay, why Pastor Jonathan?
Because he presents himself. He's a godly man. I think he knows God's word, and he knows how to love people well.
Yeah.
Even though you're like, I'm pretty sure I'm not very lovable, and I know that guy's not very well, and he's loving him. So he's a very respectable person to people.
Yes, and that is the point. I think when it comes to what an individual finds a certain person respectable, it's often because they want to be like that person. So you would say you'd like to emulate some of his character qualities. Everybody has a different person that they find respectable because they admire their character traits. There are things that they want to emulate in themselves. So that is the crux of being, an overseer. Whoever wants to, witness to people, whoever wants to lead people, whoever wants to minister to people. You don't even have to lead to minister to people.
It doesn't mean you have to agree with them. So
yes.
I'm thinking about old people. Old people are like, I just want some respect. And it's like, okay, I'm going to give you respect. It doesn't mean that I have to agree with what you're saying because you're a kook.
Yeah.
But I will respect the fact that you have some experience and you have some things that are really like faithful to your wife or whatever.
Yes.
You're like, oh, I respect that.
Yeah, respectable people are oftentimes those that we try to emulate. I mean, it doesn't obviously have to be all of their personality traits because everybody has something, but respectable people are oftentimes the people that others are talking about them because, they just naturally give off that air, that essence of whatever it is, that peace or that confidence, that teachable spirit, things like that, where they're like, I really respect that. And that is definitely one of the qualities of a good leader, a good teacher, is those character traits that people can look at where they don't have to be like, here's what I do to be a godly man. They just set the example from their living.
So next one's hospitable.
Hospitable.
And I think that one of my gifts, my spiritual gifts, are hospitality. I love having people over.
Sure.
It's probably more about making people. My wife, we always thought that she didn't have it, but she's actually probably more hospitable than I am.
Oh, yeah.
People walk into our house and they're like, I love your house. And it's like, well, it's a lot of used furniture in here.
Yeah, sure.
We do it in early attic.
Yes.
But being hospitable is helping someone feel the love of God. And so what does it look like for me? It looks like this week on New Year's Day.
Yeah.
I just was there's this guy in my men's group that he's a quiet guy, and all morning long it's like invite him to dinner.
Right.
So I texted him. I said, hey, do you and your wife want to come to dinner 3:00 today? And, he got back with me shortly. Yes. So we ended up, my father-in-law couldn't come. So it was just the four of us. And we ended up having this great conversation with people that really don't know anybody down here. They were going to spend the day probably having toast and peanut butter and jelly.
Right.
And so I did it because I felt like the Holy Spirit was doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, they may go, okay, we got to get better friends.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Check him off
weirdos.
the list. Check him off the list. But being hospitable is saying I'm willing to sacrifice, and it's not a sacrifice.
Right.
Sacrifice my time to minister to people in God's love. And at the end of the day, you're walking away going, man, that was like awesome. They
Yeah.
were like really good people. They were
Totally
really
worth it.
interesting. And so it's totally worth it. And I think that that's what hospitality is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Next one is able to teach. This is an interesting one because not everybody feels like they're able to, stand in front of a classroom and give a lecture. But is that what it means, being able to speak to large groups of people like that? Or is there something else to being able to teach?
I think you're a teacher.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Me, teacher?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think
thank you
have you have a lot of knowledge, or you're full of yourself, or one or the other.
It's probably both.
No, you explain things really well, and you prepare. You're like when you teach the high school group. I'm like,
Right.
This is like really good.
Yeah.
He put a lot of thought into it. You're just not You're not a. I think a teacher's not just opinionated, like me.
Yes. Well, thank you. Like you.
I got an opinion about anything.
People, whenever they teach, they tend to throw their own opinions in there, whether you notice it or not, for sure. But yeah, I think being able to teach is, especially with I have a really good ability to kind of like see others or kind of understand what other people are thinking.
Okay.
So I see people's reactions, especially like their facial expressions, whenever I'm like giving a sermon or something, and I see somebody go like, "What? What did you just say?" And then I can kind of
Okay, I'm gonna have to repeat that.
Let me backpedal and explain that a little bit, because I tend to go off on these tangents where I use these words that people are like, "What did you just say?" I remember I was having a conversation with a friend, or just like with a group of my friends, and then after I finished what I was saying, one of my friends, she just stops me and she goes, "You just used whereas in a sentence." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I did." Whoops. Like nobody uses that conversationally. I was like, blah, 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 blah. Whereas this is, and they were just kind of like, okay.
Is that a wrong word to say?
No, it's just, that's something that you would use in like an APA paper for your psychology class.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was just.
Leave your college degree at home.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So for being a teachable, having a teachable spirit is being able to understand others. It has a lot to do with empathy, where you can put yourself in other people's shoes. It's like, what level do I have to explain this? Is this somebody that understands this a lot, or is it somebody that's still at the elementary concepts of this? So you can kind of read the room a little bit if you're teachable. Yeah. You can understand people better, and you just enjoy hearing yourself talk.
And there's different types. So on my Saturday morning breakfast, we've got one guy that he's a Bible teacher. Mm-hmm. You're gonna understand what he's talking about,
right?
And it's well thought out. He writes it out.
Right.
He teaches it. It's good. Mm-hmm. You walk away, you're like, wow, never knew that before.
Right.
On the other hand, I get a topic like being teachable, and I teach by example.
Right.
I say, hey, this is what I do.
Sure.
When I'm doing this is what's thinking behind it, and why is it? So I'm more of a life skill.
Yes.
Is that
absolutely. Real
application,
real life application of things. I think I have the ability to make things idiot proof. So a lot of the times I can explain, because I'm an idiot. So when I can understand something by like, okay, well, she just said something that is in a foreign language. Let me break it down into, layman's terms or real English. And then I can say, okay, now I get it. And now I can kind of explain it from ground up.
Cool.
So everybody has different ways of teaching.
So we already talked about not giving to drunkenness. Here's the thing. The issue is there's nothing wrong with drinking.
Yes.
Unless you have a drinking problem. And if your drinking is causing you problems,
you have a drinking problem.
Yes,
if it gets in the way.
So if you want to be, and quite honestly, it confuses your thinking at times.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's people that make a lot of bad decisions.
Sure.
And it's not just drunkenness. It's the whole drug world.
Substances,
substance abuse, and you go to you look in the prisons today. Most people are there because of drinking or drugs.
Sure, something related.
They
to drugs.
did something, and even if you whatever. So if it's causing you problems and you find yourself, I've got to have 4 drinks in order to have a conversation with my wife before I get home.
Sure,
you might have a problem
if it hinders normal day-to-day life.
Right,
if something needs addressing.
And so. So what about the next one? Not violent. So you just can't beat the shit out of your wife and your kids?
Something like that, yeah. Not violent, but gentle.
Gentle?
So being gentle with your wife and kids. So, yeah, don't put a hole in the wall. with your bare hands.
Well, because that scares people.
That does tend to, alarm people a little bit. It's a little off-putting. Oh, you can put a hole in the door with your bare hand, or you have broken furniture because of your fits of rage. So this one's pretty straightforward, I feel like, rather than the other ones. Just self-control.
So what do you do? But what do you do when you have anger and you just don't be violent?
Well, easier said than done. I have like I said earlier, I like to go to the gym. That's my way of getting it out. It really helps. It's really helpful, especially when you're doing something that is very physically tasking while you're thinking about the thing that's making you upset, and you're just like, and you can push out a couple more reps. It's a really good way to fuel your lift.
I think it's if your first reaction is to strike out at something,
yes,
we'll use that, even striking out as violent.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my first reaction growing up was swinging.
Right, because of your upbringing.
And then I met Joyce, and she said,
"Stop it."
She looked at me. I was like so mad. She goes, "You hit me, you'll never see me again." I was like, "Okay,
fair enough."
I guess I'm going to have to change that. And
Yeah.
I've never hit her. I've never thought about hitting her.
Right.
Well, maybe I thought about it once or twice.
Thank God you never did.
Praise Jesus.
Yeah.
Praise God I'm a Christian, because I certainly would be a mess. I'd be a single, lonely, old, drunk man.
Crotchety old man, yeah. Well, yeah.
I'd be under a bridge someplace.
Thank God for God. I mean, he definitely helps with the self-control, because it's something that you feel like you're getting molded like clay. It's weird when you look back a year ago and you're like, wow, I didn't even realize that I changed. I've had a couple of moments where I was like, I had no idea that I had even changed this about myself. Because a lot of the times when you have a problem and then you find that thing has been, taken from you, or that thing's been changed from you, you tend not to think about it anymore. Okay. Like I remember I was having a pain in my lower back, and then, it slowly started going away until one day I remembered. I was like, oh yeah, I used to have this pain in my back, and I just don't think about it because it's not there anymore. And you look back and you say, thank God it's been changed.
So not quarrelsome. We talked about that. You just don't like to argue, right?
I'm not a confrontational person, no. So you'll never see me having like a shouting match with somebody or arguing with somebody about, or I'll never argue with my boss about my hours, or I'll never argue with a customer about something. I'll never yell at a friend. I'm just not. I tend not to enjoy confrontation like that. So for me,
there's people that love it.
Oh, there's people that live for it. There's people that will intentionally start arguments. Yeah, that's just.
And I had this guy at the fire station. Mm-hmm. We're talking about something, and then he took this other side, and I'm like, and I was screaming, and because I was so mad. I'm like, why are you doing this? He goes, I like to banter, and I'm like, said a couple things, and I said, well, here, can I share something? I don't.
Yeah.
And he's like, huh? I'm like, no, it's aggravating.
Yeah, stop it.
He loves to argue.
There are people that love to argue. And some people are wired like that. I'm not. I'm the kind that's not like tail between my legs backing up, but I'll just be like, all right, whatever.
So lawyers are all going to hell?
Pretty much, yeah. That's what I think. No, but the people that will...
They argue for a living, though.
Well, yeah. That's a different breed of human that does that.
That's not quarrelsome.
That's not quarrelsome. That is, to be not quarrelsome is, I guess, kind of like what I have, where it's just, what I have is to a fault, because if something wrongs me, or if somebody does something wrong, my natural inclination is just be like, all right, whatever, it's fine, then I'll just leave. I'll
just do passive-aggressive behavior.
Yeah, and it's an unresolved issue.
I'll go kick a wall.
Right, I'll go kick a wall. Go home, kick the dog. It's something that... Not being quarrelsome doesn't mean I'm going to just not address it and then I'm going to go home and kick the dog. Not being quarrelsome is resolving issues as opposed to quarreling about it. And it doesn't necessarily mean, okay, whatever, just go away, and then not resolving the issue.
Could you get that, could you add negativity into that? Just always seeing the glass half empty?
Yeah, sure. Like
always looking for something negative?
Always saying, I know a lot. I've actually, now that you mention it, I know a lot of people that they're always just like, well, that sucks. Doesn't this just suck? And you're like, hey, dude, what are you doing?
We're walking around Disney World.
Yeah. You see the negative in everything. That's it. And then you snap. Yeah, there are those people that are just kind of Eeyore, Wah.
I have these friends that he's a good guy, but he looks at negative quite a bit.
Yeah.
And they went to Pop Stroke the other day, and he brought his whole family, and there's 6 of them, and it was like $250.
Yeah.
And his wife the whole time was like, do not say anything. Keep your mouth shut. You do not need to point out how these people are getting rich on us, and you don't need to stop it right now.
That's a great example.
He goes, it was the best time of the week.
Great. Amazing. That's a great step.
Anybody that doesn't know about Pop Stroke, it's this, who's the guy?
Tiger Woods
started it. And it's as much as you want to go. Unfortunately, there's like 18 million people in there.
And it's $18 million to get in.
It's $35
Oh my gosh, dude.
Play putt-putt.
The idea is it's an all day. So you pay once in the morning and you can be there all day. But it's all access. You can play as many times as you want. And
there's food that you can give them.
It's also $18 million.
Yeah, and drinks that you want to give them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also $18 million.
Somebody's... Anyway,
they're profiting off of it. Just to say
we're being quarrelsome.
We are being quarrelsome.
We're not being above reproach.
No, we're being glass half.
How about
empty.
a lover for money? You don't love money, do you?
I hate it. I can't stand money. No, not being a lover of money. That is, so the TikTok influencers, the Instagram influencers. I think the today's aspect of being a lover of money, and my generation are those young hustler types that are all, they want to be Logan Paul, who was a multimillionaire when he was my age.
I'm not sure who that is.
Okay, well, old school, new school. Logan Paul is this, and then his brother Jake. They're these young 20-some-year-old TikTok, YouTube, Instagram influencers where they've made it big on social media, and their whole thing is their brand and their name, and they have all this money, and they're super successful, and they do all this and that, and they're living the dream, man.
Oh my gosh.
And they're super young, and they've got it all. They've got it all figured out by the time they're 20 years old, which is, for all intents and purposes, not real, right? So they set this example that everybody wants to be rich yesterday.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to have this or that. Everybody needs to be successful. The idea of being a lover of money today is chasing the dragon. It's I'm going to be successful. I'm going to be young. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to grind. I'm going to put aside, normal life to chase this unattainable dream, essentially. And it's probably not going to pan out because you're not ready yet, because you're not an adult.
So the opposite of that is, it's not even opposite. So this is what I want to say. I'm going to say something.
Go ahead, Chris. You are the other half of this podcast. You're allowed to say something.
I'm 50%.
You're 50%. I'm 50%.
I was going to say 49. But so there's this. So the 3 young people that run my car wash, they do well. I mean, they have a good job. It's they pay them well, but they work hard. The opposite of lover for money is they have a work ethic. This this guy that we bought it from, trained these kids to be amazing worker. And I'm just looking over there going, your identity is in who you say you are and how hard you work. And so there's the whole TikTok thing, and the world says this money, as lover of money, is going to make you happy.
Yes.
But you're never going to have enough, right?
Right.
Isn't that what, who said that? How much is enough? And he said just a little bit more. Who said that?
Oh, I don't know. King Solomon or something?
No, it was Rockefeller.
Like
Rockefeller.
yes.
They asked him, how much is enough? And he said, just a little bit more. And there's this other book, this Andy Stanley. If you've never heard of Andy Stanley, he's a great preacher in Atlanta. What's the name of his church, Anyway.
Couldn't tell you.
Andy Stanley, it's called How to Be Rich. He's got this series on how to be rich. But he's like, how to be rich, how to be good at being rich. And so from a kingdom purpose, there's nothing wrong with being rich.
Sure.
And as I look back at my life, when I was making $20,000 a year, I always used to think if I made $40,000, everything would be fine.
Yes.
Then I made $40,000, and I'm like, well, probably 80 would really cover everything.
Right.
Then I got to 80, and it was like I'm going to have to get a part-time job because this certainly isn't enough.
Yeah.
And so then even retirement, people are like, well, you need $1 million. Well, once you get to $1 million, you're like, well, that's probably not going to be enough. There's never enough.
It's never enough.
And so people that make $300,000 are always thinking, well, if I made 600.
Yes.
And the 600. And so it goes on and on and on, and it's never enough. And so it's an empty promise.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's what he's trying to get here, not a lover of money. Because what you'll do is you'll say, I can't come to this men's meeting, or I can't come to this leadership meeting. I can't give you the time over here. And again, we're talking about being a leader of the church.
Yep.
I can't come to these meetings because I have this other responsibility that I can make 100 hours that night. And so I'm going to choose money and not believe that God will provide for you.
Yeah, I think ultimately what this is God provides, not yourself. Yeah. You can work hard, but ultimately the Lord provides. And some people hear that and they're like, that's dumb because I worked for my paycheck. Yeah. That's dumb. It's like, well, you could have chosen this. You could have chosen the whatever, but you give the Lord your time and he will give it back to you.
So all of this is not easy.
Correct. None of this is
natural. And do you think you'll ever achieve all these?
I think there's natural things that for my personality, I tend toward, so not giving to drunkenness, that's easy for me. Not a lover of money, that's easy for me. Faithful, that's easy. But other ones on this list, I don't think I will ever achieve perfectly. And I think that's how it is for everybody. Everybody on this list has maybe one or two things that they naturally do, or maybe not any of them. But I think that there will never be, I checked all of the list today and I had a perfect day where I did nothing wrong. I had no sins.
Could happen.
It could, but it's unlikely that you'll do it by yourself.
And perfectly. I think what happens is, so years ago, I was pretty angry and all the time. And what God was telling me is you just don't know how to love. And so it's really funny because now, some 20 years later, people are like, you are one of the most loving guys that I know. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Stop it.
What are you talking about? And just like you were saying, I think beforehand, all of a sudden one day you've overcome this drunkenness, or you've overcome this bitterness, or you've overcome this desire to cheat on your wife, okay, or to have an affair. Because there's people that live that way.
Yeah.
And you overcome it, and you're like, oh, how did that happen? Oh, wait a minute. I asked God.
And he did it.
To help me not to, because this one I'm doing not very good at.
Right, yeah.
Can you show me how to do this? And then all of a sudden you're like, I've not been drinking every night.
Yeah, and it isn't I prayed and then the next morning I woke up and it vanished. It's I prayed and God showed me the way to walk.
Right.
God will show you the direction which you need to walk. He will show you the journey, because oftentimes the best lessons that we learn, the things that stick with us, are things that we've learned through a trial or through a journey. So the Lord will say, okay, I see your humbleness and your willingness to change. Let's walk in the direction of that change. It'll be a little while, but when you come out the other end, you will say, thank God that I did this, and this will stick with me. This isn't going to be something that fades tomorrow.
Yeah. So I think I wrote this when I wrote this step or whatever, is that if you want to be a baller for Jesus, you've got to step it up.
Yeah.
And you've got to emulate the way you want other people. You've got to be the example.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be the man or woman that God created you to be. And you're like, I know when I see someone like this, I'm like,
right. Yeah.
Where you're perfect. All that does is it points people to Jesus, because we know that when you're above reproach, you're trying to be more like God, and you're trying to be obedient to these things that I'll never do without the power of the Holy Spirit. And so if you want to be a baller, just say, God, I want to be above reproach in this area. That's what I want to do. And so with that, I got nothing else. How about you?
That's good. Preach, preacher. I think it's exactly right. Start with one thing, and the Lord will lead you down that path. That's being above reproach. So that was this week. Next week is being a servant of all. Oh, servant of all. What the heck?
That's a great verse. It's what did Jesus say?
Well, we'll find out next week on the next series episode.
Happy New Year, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that good stuff.
And you had a good New Year's Eve?
I did. Did you have a good New Year's Eve?
I did.
That's good.
Well, we want to wish you all a Happy New Year. We want to tell you that we're doing this. We're not making any money from this. Mm-hmm. We're above reproach on that one.
That's right.
But we want you to. We just want to share what God's doing in our life, and minister to people that are looking to have a deeper walk with Jesus.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And not pointing to us.
Mm-hmm. A little bit. At the beginning and the end, yeah.
But pointing you to God's Word.
To God's Word. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Peace.
Peace.